good to see this guy. Fired up, he's back in town. Bronson, congratulations, man. This is a big, big weekend. You know, you've been a part of this whole thing. They ask the current players to come to the big ceremony every Sunday night. But now here you are. And, as you're getting a little bit closer here to this big weekend, what are your thoughts?
Well, it's half hectic for one. You got a million friends and family in town, but the beautiful part about it is just thinking about being the 91st person, right behind your father, inducted into the oldest team in Major League Baseball's Hall of Fame, man. I mean, how can you, if you think about leaving a legacy anywhere in the world, somehow, some way, having your face next to Pete Rose and Johnny Bench inside of the Hall of Fame is about as good as it gets.
It's interesting, and you talked about this when we had you a few months back, but just to kind of revisit that whole thing, it's so amazing, isn't it, how life works out where, you weren't thrilled about the idea of leaving Boston and when you got traded here. And now here you are going into the Reds Hall of Fame. I mean, if somebody would have told you the first month, 2 months, I think I've heard you say that really kind of took you 3-4 months to kind of feel like you're part of the whole thing. Who would have thunk it, right?
Yeah, it's totally bizarre. I get traded and I'm as agitated as I've ever been in my life. I mean, every mix of emotion you could possibly have. I mean, that day that I got that call from Theo Epstein was probably the hardest pill I've ever had to swallow in my life. And then to come to a city where you fell more in love with this town than I did with Boston and feel like it's your speed, and you wind up, marrying a hometown girl and feeling like you're really entrenched into this community, and I'm playing music around town here, 15, 20 times a year. It just, it feels like home. And it's nice to have a place in Major League Baseball that you feel like you could walk into the stadium and still be recognized in a way like you're still a current player, but also, that you can feel the love from the people who, that clean the locker room all the way up to, the guys who own the team. So it's been a joyous ride for sure.
It's interesting. I've always wondered, I'm curious to hear your thoughts because, there are some guys, in your case, you're leaving Boston, you're coming to a smaller town. Okay. And you weren't sure how it was going to work out. I'm dumbfounded to this day to see what happened to Paul O'Neill when he left Cincinnati and went to New York. He was the last guy in the world I would have ever thought could have handled New York and everything that comes with it. And, I mean, he turned out to be one of the greatest Yankees of all time. He's in Monument Park now. Do you think that maybe guys who start their careers in a quote-unquote big market, that it would probably be good for them to play at least a little bit of their career in a mid-size or smaller market?
Oh, there's no doubt that there's a difference, and playing, I came up with the Pirate organization, as you know, for 8 seasons. And inside of that bubble, I had no idea that there was another way to kind of, navigate the game, really. I mean, just from the way you prepare, from the way they treat you in spring training. And when I got to the Red Sox in 2003, I had no idea that you could really make such a shift mentally in the way that you would approach the game. And it was really kind of eye-opening in a way that not only the way the fans treat you, the way that it is inside of a major league stadium. I went to Fenway Park that first time and hadn't felt a buzz like that ever inside of a big league ballpark, really, playing in Pittsburgh for those 3 years. And so, coming to Cincinnati was kind of the middle of the road, kind of in between. It was like the oldest team in the game, and there was definitely a vibe here when we're doing well. And when you weren't doing well, you could tell that it emptied out a little bit. So it was like, seeing a little bit of the whole spectrum was something that I think was worth having for a big league guy. And somebody like, playing with Griffey Jr., knowing that he was, didn't get to play in the playoffs for once or twice in 20-something years. You see a guy like that and you wish that he could have gone somewhere else, to have a run at the end. And as great as he was, sometimes we don't get to experience everything, but I feel like I have. And that's been kind of icing on the cake for my career.
I have to believe, and you tell me, but I have to believe, if I remember right, when you first came over, you got off to a really, really good start when you first came to the Reds. How important was that for you?
I think that was mentally for myself. It was just really a nice way of getting me out of the rut that, of just constantly thinking about the fact that I had been ripped out of a place that I signed a 3-year deal. I thought I was going to be a Red Sox, at least for those 3 years. I just loved playing in a place where it felt like the Beatles were reuniting for the first time in 30 years. I mean, that's how the fans really made you feel in Fenway Park. And I didn't really know what I was getting coming to Cincinnati. I'd played in Cincinnati as a Pirate at the old stadium. And really, the downtown felt kind of dangerous at the time. It didn't feel like it was like a city that was real welcoming, So, getting off to that good start, I think I started about 5-1. I was getting deep in ball games, and I hit those first 2 homers to start the season. It really kind of propelled me to be present tense, to be inside this locker room with this group of guys, with Ken Griffey Jr., Adam Dunn, guys like Rich Aurelia, Scott Hatterberg. It was Ryan Friedel, all those guys on that club. I didn't know them well at the time. I'd played against them a little bit, but it gave me an opportunity to kind of like clear my mind and feel like, okay, we're having a pretty good run here. We got a chance to win the division and try to kind of focus on the task at hand.
You're asked all the time about, maybe your highest high and your lowest low. Your highest high during your tender, your time with the Reds would be what?
Game 2, yep. National League Series, 2012. I'm going up against, a Madison Bumgarner that's not quite the Madison Bumgarner that we all knew in the playoffs right after that. But I don't think he loses a playoff game for 4 or 5 years after that. And, we go deep in that ball game with a no-hitter and just, everything clicking that night. I can remember warming up in the bullpen and just feeling loose really, really fast that night. I had like adrenaline coming out of my ears, and it was trying to pull that back. And I had crisp stuff in the bullpen, and you don't know if that's going to translate to the game, but it did. And then you start getting deep in a ball game, and the crowd is being silenced on the road, and there's just really nothing better than knowing you're playing on national TV. Everybody's watching you, and you've got a job to do and see if you can knock it out of the park that night. And we did. And so that's the highest high I had in a Reds uniform for sure.
Would lowest low be the ensuing next 3 days or something else?
I take negativity in stride pretty easily and can wipe it off. But I'd say, definitely not getting through that series was about as tough as it came, especially with the inner workings that were going on that time with conversations between Dusty Baker and Brian Price, the pitching coach, and the medical staff, not knowing if we were going to let Johnny Cueto stay on the roster or not. And, should we have really pitched Mike Leake in that series? He probably wasn't ready for the big stage yet. And I was hoping that they'd go Latos on 3 days rest and myself on 3 days rest in game 5 if we needed it. And they went against the grain there. And it was a tough pill to swallow. I didn't get to touch the ball again for the rest of that series. And I felt like we might have had a chance had we kind of done things a little differently.
So you got everything going on here. Who's somebody, because you make your home, at least you're here more than you are anywhere else over the course of a calendar year here in Cincinnati, Ohio. Who are you looking forward to seeing this weekend that maybe you haven't seen in a long time?
I got some hometown buddies in town, but I get to see them quite often. But I got a call from Ryan Hannigan yesterday. He surprised me, said he was going to stop through. Old teammate Mike Lincoln, one of my favorites of all time. We played back in the Pirate days together, and then after he left Minnesota, he came to Cincinnati. And one of the greatest stories ever, I was having a conversation with Mike Lincoln in Mount Adams, and it was an off season. He said, my arm feels pretty good. I haven't pitched in a couple of years. And I called down to the stadium and got him a bullpen, basically. Billy Hatcher came down and watched it, and the GM came down and watched it, and they signed him on the spot, and he wound up making the most money in his career the next 2 years after that. So I always jokingly say that I got Mike Lincoln a 2-year deal out of the garage. And that was a beautiful thing. But Lincoln's going to be there. I know Drew Stubbs is coming back. I heard Jay Bruce might be in town. But also seeing guys like Mario Soto, and Pete Rose and Johnny Bench, and just all the guys that are already kind of wearing the red jacket like Barry Larkin and Eric Davis. It's it's special to be inside that club for sure. You don't think about a lot of things like that when you're playing the game. You're trying to survive and see if you can make the back of your baseball card look good for the rest of your life. But it will be an honor, and it's going to be really fun to kind of mix it up with these guys and get to enjoy their company a little bit.
So now I remember when you had basically the press conference after it was announced that you were going into the Hall of Fame. I think someone asked you, if I recall, were you going to incorporate music into your speech, acceptance speech? Where are you on that? You want to give us a little preview, or is there going to be a little singing, little guitar involved, or no?
Yeah, there's two things. One is on the field on Saturday.
Yeah.
And you've only got a couple of minutes. I've already heard the groans about the 12-minute speech that Barry Larkin gave that that cost the team some money because MLB didn't start the game on time, so they got fined for that one. So I've only got a couple of minutes on the field, and I feel like, the fans a lot of times are kind of moving about the stadium a bit, and it's not quite as intimate. So I think that first day, that first evening is probably going to be more about, just kind of giving thanks back to the organization and the city and people that are kind of involved in baseball. But then on night 2 at the gala, it's going to be more intimate. It's a quiet setting. It's more like a ballroom. And, that's where I'm going to get to talk about my childhood and my parents and things that are a little bit closer to the heart from back in the old days. And I will have a guitar that night at the gala kind of strapped on me. Most people are used to talking at the podium. I'm just going to have a microphone stand, and I'm going to be playing little songs in between kind of this speech that are from my childhood, being in this weight room with my father at a very young age, and just kind of these memories that put me on this path and this journey to get me to a place where I could be in the Reds Hall of Fame.
Well, how's your dad doing, by the way? I know that his health has not been good for quite some time, but he is here, right, along with your mom?
Yep, and my parents are in the house. Got some high school buddies that are going to be here. My father's he's a tough cookie, but he's had 2 strokes and 2 heart attacks and 2 kidney transplants, and he's got some cancer now in his bones. And but he's here, and should be hopefully a good weekend for everybody.
Oh, I'm sure they're going to love every single second of it. How's the album doing? I think that came out back in February. We had you on the program. How's it going? Where are you playing next? What do you got going on?
We've got a bunch of shows around town in September coming up around the whole kind of Cincinnati area within a couple of hours, and most of that stuff is just playing cover songs. The album, we put it out, we kind of did the best we could to push it a little bit. But what you realize in the music industry pretty quickly is that if you want to really kind of sustain original music and really kind of keep the momentum going, you've got to get in a van like you're 19 years old and kind of grind it. And I don't think anybody in my band is willing to do that. So, kind of the sweet spot of playing around Cincinnati for a flat rate and sleep in our own bed every single night, and guys can go home with, $1,000 in their pocket, and we give you a 2-hour good show has been really kind of, a nice surprise coming from, talking to other people in the music industry and how hard it is to really kind of make it that simple. And so we're really playing around town a lot more. But the record, we did what it did. I don't know what it's doing out there. I don't really check the numbers a whole lot, but you just hope that people get a chance to hear it sometime. I know they're selling them at the Reds Hall of Fame shop and also at the Game Used shop. I've been signing vinyl records for them and CDs, and they've been flying off the shelves. So hopefully Cincinnati fans who love the Reds are getting an opportunity to kind of, get a taste of my music.
Well, I've really enjoyed listening to it ever since you gave me a chance to get an early listen in on it. Let me ask you about the current Reds a little bit, because I know you pay attention to how they're doing. You still go down to the clubhouse from time to time, see some of the guys, all that kind of thing. There's a good vibe about the team. How do you feel about their chances here over the second half?
It's been obviously just a completely unexpected season. I mean, if we run the tape back on your father, giving his prediction on the radio and mine, I think his was worse than mine, but I said they'd probably do 10 games better, so I thought they'd lose 90. And this has been a total shock. I mean, a totally different style of baseball than I've seen in the Reds locker room in a long, long time. I mean, the speed on the bases, the youthfulness of guys, playing almost like we're in Double-A or in high school in a way. They're just playing with a reckless abandon and just really enjoying themselves. And you don't see that in a big league locker room a whole lot, especially from that young of a team. But I think in the second half here, I think the starting, it's going to be hard to continue to put up 5 or 6 runs every night. I think if the pitching doesn't come back healthy and start helping a little bit on the starting staff a little bit, I think they could get in a dogfight for the division. But honestly, the way they've been playing, you can't count this team out. I mean, they've been kind of shocking the world all year. So it's to start 7-15 and be 10 games over 500 almost at the break and leading the division is mind blowing, really.
I'm curious, Bronson, because you've always been a guy that'll just kind of lay it out there. You played on some good teams. You played some really good teams, great teams in Boston. You come here, you played on some good teams, and, just never worked out as far as getting to the LCS or the World Series. But you've played on a lot of contending teams. If you're in the Reds clubhouse as a player right now, okay, and all of these unexpected things have happened. Now all of a sudden everybody's expectations have changed. Maybe the players thought from the very beginning that we can go out and shock some people, but not many other people thought that. But the reality of it is, here we are at the All-Star break, and they're sitting in first place in their division. How important do you think it is to players in the current Reds clubhouse or any other clubhouses you've been in where you see, one area of your team specifically right now that is really short, and that would be starting pitching with guys hurt, whatever it might be. How important is it for guys in the clubhouse, for ownership or baseball ops people to go out and swing a deal to bring in a Bronson Arroyo kind of guy, a pitcher, a veteran guy that's been around a little bit?
In a perfect world, you definitely want that shot in the arm. I mean, the economics are a whole different ballgame, right? Like, is that really affordable? Is that attainable? You feel like we want to go out and take a shot at a guy like that? It's hard sometimes to find that guy that's reasonably priced, like I was when I came here, that's going to come out and be so consistent. A lot of times you've got like the cream of the crop. You've got the Max Scherzers of the world that obviously come with a price tag that's too much to afford. And then you've got, a whole another sect of guys that might come here and disrupt the way the game is being played in this locker room and maybe don't help as much as you think they will. Maybe they're at the tail end of their career and they don't quite give you those quality starts that you're looking for. But, I think inside this locker room right now, having the ability to come back in games, which they've done for such a long time, gives a little bit more of a breathing room on thinking about the pitching. I still feel like in order to win the whole big dance, they're going to have it. But at this point in the season, I don't think you've had a Reds team that when they're down 5-1 after the fourth inning, you still feel confident that they will win. Mm-hmm. In the years that I was on this ball club, the one thing that I always said we were missing was kind of like those tough at-bats, guys who could grind and not strike out and put the ball in play. You always felt that way when you were playing the Cardinals. But in our locker room, you had a lot of guys like a Jay Bruce, you had a Drew Stubbs, you had a lot of guys who were really hot for a month at a time and then really cold for a month at a time. And what I'm seeing in this lineup is guys who are grinding all day, every day, constantly giving good at-bats, rarely ever just swinging and missing a lot. And that's why you're probably not seeing a lot of home runs, but I feel like it gives them an opportunity to feel like they can win every night, even if they don't go out and get that guy from another ball club to solidify this rotation.
All right, last thing I want to ask you about, because you've been down this road, had to come back from injuries over the course of your career, whatever it might be. And I'm not asking you to be the Reds medical director here, but I'm curious, just from a time standpoint, if you have Green and Lodolo that have not pitched competitively, in Lodolo's case, all the way back to, I think it was May or June, something like that. Green now has gone close to a month. They're out in Arizona. They're not throwing competitively. What's realistic to build up enough strength and stamina to return to a major league club where they can run you out there, not expecting you to give them 3 innings as a starter, because, hell, they're getting that from guys right now. But what's a reasonable amount of time that those two guys could come back? How much time would they need to get to a point where they're ready to throw 100 pitches in a game? Month and a half?
I think a month is probably the bare minimum, honestly, to get, once you're healthy and you're playing long toss and you feel like, whatever is bothering in your body is not bothering you anymore. For me, honestly, it's people ask me how I've stayed healthy most of my career. And I felt like, the fact that I took spring training kind of easy and slow, and I always wanted I wanted the whole season to look like a slow up ramp. And I wanted to start at the bottom, and at the end of the season, I wanted to feel my strongest. And if you get hurt in midseason and have that total drop off, you go back down to zero. It's like starting over at spring training. You've got to get the body built back up. You've got to get you throw 1 inning in a game on the sideline, let's say in like batting practice, and then you throw 1 inning in a real game. It's a total difference. Then you throw 2 innings in a game in a bigger stadium with eyes on you. It's adrenaline rush. It's a total different thing. So to get to where you could throw 5, 6, 7 innings in a major league stadium where games count and there's 40,000 in the house and the team is buzzed, to me, a month is absolutely, and you're probably barely getting by at that point. You're just hoping that you can get those first couple of starts under your belt. Can you get like a 5 1/3, give the team a chance to win, and then kind of get your footing underneath you? But to come from Arizona, pop right into this locker room and dominate a big league game is almost impossible to do.
Is it harder to do for a power guy than it is a guy like you?
I don't know. I think everybody's so individual and so different. I would say, you probably have a little bit of an advantage if you feel good enough to throw the ball 95 to 100. Hunter can probably come back, and maybe he can't get deep in the ball game, but he probably can still feel a little bit better than I would for the first 4 or 5 innings. Because a guy like myself, you need more tools in the bag to probably be successful, right? I'm going to need command. I'm going to need to feel strong, and I'm going to still have to be able to decipher, the strategy against these hitters. Sometimes if you have 95 to 100 like him, you've probably got a little bit more room for error at least, and to go out there and just kind of let it eat. If you're feeling healthy, maybe you can get your footing a little faster than myself.
Bronson, it was such a pleasure to watch you pitch, man. I mean, it was just really cool to watch you pitch and do your thing out there all those years with the Reds and sitting up in the booth to call your games. And on top of that, you're just a good dude. So we're really happy for you, man. Congratulations. Good luck this weekend, and have a great time.
I appreciate it, man. Thom, it's always a joy to be around here and to listen to your voice, man. It sounds good today. Thanks for having me.
All right, I'll see you soon. Bronson Arroyo, kind enough to join us today.